Mike Edgerton, good to have you in. Mike is the manager for security at New York and New Jersey Port Authority. Mike, I thought you probably had something there. Feel free to come in, Mike. Open up your mic, and we would love to hear from you. You've missed quite a bit of the conversation, but just tell us a bit about what you're involved with and some of the issues you're facing in New York, New Jersey.
Yeah, thanks, David, and apologies for being late. Had an operational matter, unfortunately, that came up in spite of my best intentions. So I caught the last parts of the discussion. My role at the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, it's a regional organization that essentially oversees multimodal transportation modes in the New York City region and neighboring New Jersey. And for those who are not familiar with that region, there's a very strong symbiotic relationship between northern New Jersey and New York City that kind of led to the creation of our organization. We're a governmental organization, but we take a regional approach. And so to build a little bit on David, on what I heard at the end here, what's interesting to me and a challenge that we have certainly, I think, in the United States is the parochialism a little bit in some of the political, political environment between our state level governments, our intermediate level of government with our 50 states, whereby there is a little bit of not only not in my term of office, but not in my backyard, if you will, where there are potential resilient activities that are of value to the region for regional resilience that don't meet very specific and local political objectives necessarily. And so there's that constant tension, which I'm sure most of the participants are familiar with, that we certainly deal with. We are fortunate in our region that there are a couple of large planning organizations that are looking at regional resilience, and my focus is largely on supply chain resilience, but not exclusively on supply chain resilience. So I think those are some of the challenges we certainly are feeling right now, based on kind of my jumping in at the last bit of the conversation, David. Hopefully that was relevant.
Absolutely relevant, Mike. I mean, New York is an incredible city. I mean, it has so much as a state, rather. It has so much to it. Because of, most of us, myself included, when we think about New York, actually we think about Manhattan. Yeah. There is a whole load of New York out there which is not Manhattan. But you are facing incredible pressures. I mean, New York winters are brutal. You've invited me over in the beginning of December. I hope you sorted out the weather for that, Michael. I'm looking forward to being with you in a few weeks' time. But storms come in. You know, the East Coast itself seems to be, the whole of the East Coast seems to be in a very vulnerable position. And yet it is, you know, you close down the East Coast of America, you pretty well close down all of that side of America and a lot of global trade, a lot of global activities. Is New York, as New York, forward looking? I mean, is it asking the questions about 2030, 2050 and putting stuff in place?
Yeah, I think so. But, you know, I think compared to many other parts, certainly of the United States, I think that's a true statement. But there still is that tension between kind of parochial local politics and the grander plan, if you will. But I think from a regional perspective, we certainly are probably more forward leaning and forward thinking than many other parts of the country. There is a concerted effort to do some advanced planning for inevitable, sea level rise. We certainly understand that the weather is becoming less and in many cases more severe. There is planning for that. We do have the history. In 2016, we had Hurricane Sandy, which was devastating to the region. And that was a significant lesson learned. Of course, we had September 11th as well in 2001, which, for those who are not familiar with kind of the supply chain and transportation element of that, if you think of, again, Manhattan is an island. And September 11th, basically, Manhattan was cut off for upwards of 24 hours, maybe a little bit more than 24 hours. all the bridges and tunnels were shut down because we didn't understand what the next, potential second wave of attacks, with the exception of emergency responders. So there was that sensitivity of supplies, food, pharmaceuticals. How much was in place and how long could a city of that magnitude or that size, and then we throw in again the geography of Long Island, which also, in addition to having two suburban, also has the New York City boroughs of Brooklyn and Queens, which is another perhaps 6 million people. And again, that was isolated for both in Hurricane Sandy and 9/11. There was a level of kind of isolation because the intermodal transportation networks weren't functioning for a period of time. So those are lessons that we have learned, and there's been significant planning for that. But again, of course, you have the political winds that sometimes influence that.
It's interesting because you talk about political, but politics is basically getting stuff done. You have to do. When people say I don't do politics, I say that's impossible. If you get three people together, you're doing politics. Basically, you're trying to get stuff done. Um, and of course, there's always payoffs and there's always different agendas.